My name is Marcus. I live in a small apartment on the edge of the city, where the walls are thin and the nights are loud. I've been working since I was a teenager, carrying boxes, driving forklifts, fixing whatever needed fixing just to keep food on the table. I got 4 kids, 4 reasons I keep waking up every morning, even when my body begs me to stay down. This story I'm about to tell isn't pretty. It's not polished, it's not sweet, it's just real. It's the story of how I worked 16 hours straight to feed my family and woke up the next morning to find out she was gone. No regret, no goodbye. Just gone. This is my truth, chapter by chapter. I left the warehouse with my legs trembling, shirt soaked through and hands so stiff I could barely close them. 16 hours. That's what it took to cover rent, food, light, and maybe, just maybe, a pair of shoes for the oldest. The foreman didn't care how tired we looked. He just waved us off like cattle, another day done. Driving back through the neighborhood, the streets looked empty, but not peaceful. The kind of empty that reminds you everyone's behind closed doors, counting coins, arguing over bills, trying to stretch a meal. The streetlights buzzed overhead, flickering like even the city was too tired to stay awake. By the time I pulled into our spot, my back screamed every time I shifted. I sat for a minute with the engine off, staring at the steering wheel, reminding myself why I couldn't just stay there. 4 kids upstairs, their little bellies full only because I pushed my body harder than it wanted to go. And her. I thought of her too, waiting maybe, or maybe already asleep. The apartment door creaked when I opened it, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. Beans and rice reheated twice, clinging to the air like it never wanted to leave. The TV was still on, low volume. A comedian laughing at his own jokes to no one in particular. Shoes scattered by the door, school bags half open. A home that looked alive but felt tired, same as me. I stepped into the kids' room and that's where I found my peace. 4 small bodies tangled in cheap blankets, breathing soft, mouths half open in dreams. My chest softened instantly. That sight was worth every aching muscle. I kissed the top of the youngest's head, careful not to wake her. For a second, the noise of the world went quiet. Then I went into the bedroom. She was there, lying with her back turned, shoulders rising and falling steady. The streetlight from outside carved lines across the wall, catching the edge of her hair. I whispered, "I'm home," though my voice cracked and barely reached her. No answer. Not a word, not a stir. I set my boots down, tried not to make a sound, and laid next to her. The mattress dipped under my weight like it always did, old springs groaning. I tried to match her breathing, thinking if I just synced myself to her rhythm, maybe the silence between us wouldn't feel so loud. But the truth is, the silence had been growing. Days turning into weeks. Her eyes somewhere else, her voice thinner, her laughter gone. Still, I told myself what I always did. Tomorrow. Tomorrow I'd ask if she was okay. Tomorrow I'd try to make her smile again. Tomorrow I'd prove we were still in this together. But promises made in exhaustion rarely survive the morning. My body gave in, dragging me down into sleep before I could even finish the thought. Even asleep, my mind raced. Bills stacked high. Shoes too small for the oldest. Diapers running low for the youngest. Letters from school I hadn't signed. I repeated the same prayer in silence. Keep them safe, keep me strong. If I had known what tomorrow held, I wouldn't have closed my eyes that night. I would have stayed awake, holding on, watching every detail, memorizing the life I thought we had. Because when the sun rose, it didn't rise on peace. It rose on absence, on silence colder than any winter. The first thing I felt when I woke up wasn't the light creeping through the blinds or the ache in my back from yesterday's labor. It was the cold. Not the kind that comes from a busted heater or an open window, but the kind that lives in an empty space beside you. Her side of the bed was untouched, sheets pulled tight, pillow bare. At first I thought maybe she was up early, maybe in the kitchen making coffee, maybe checking on the kids. But deep down I already knew. That silence wasn't new. It was heavier. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, the kind of sleep that doesn't really rest you. The apartment was too still. No clatter of dishes, no footsteps, no soft hum of her voice telling the kids to get ready for school. Just the faint buzz of the fridge and the sound of my own breath. I stood, my body stiff, and called out her name once, then twice. Nothing. The kitchen was bare of her touch. No pot on the stove, no mug half filled, no crumbs on the counter. Just the same mess from last night. Plates piled, cups scattered. I checked the kids' room. They were still asleep, 4 small chests rising and falling. unaware that the world had shifted while they dreamed. I envied them for that innocence, for not feeling the hole opening wider in this home. I opened the closet. Half her clothes were gone. The drawer she used to keep her things was empty, just dust and a few hangers rattling against the wood. My stomach sank. My knees locked. I grabbed the dresser like it could hold me upright. She didn't just step out for air. She didn't just walk to the store. She had packed. She had planned. I found a note on the counter, one line scribbled fast like even the paper didn't deserve her time. I can't do this anymore. That was it. No sorry, no take care, no reason, no regret. Just a sentence sharp enough to slice through everything I thought we had. I sat at the table, staring at those words while the clock ticked loud in my ear. I wanted to scream, but the kids were sleeping. I wanted to tear it up, but my hands shook too much. I wanted to ask her why, but there was no one to answer. My mind ran wild, flipping through every moment of the past months. The way she turned away when I reached for her. The way her eyes stayed on her phone longer than they stayed on me. The way her voice carried no warmth, only duty, like she was already gone, just waiting for the right morning to make it official. Still, I blamed myself first. Maybe I worked too much. Maybe I gave too little of me beyond the paychecks. Maybe the 16-hour days that fed our kids, starved our love. Maybe she wanted more than survival, and I was too busy chasing survival to notice. The questions clawed at me, but the answers never came. I walked back to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the empty side. The dent where her body used to rest was fading already, like the mattress was eager to forget her. I pressed my hand there, cold sheets under my palm, and whispered, "Why?" No reply, just the hum of the fridge in the next room and the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. The kids began to stir. Little feet hit the floor. Little voices mumbled sleepy questions. I wiped my face quick, because they couldn't see me cracked open. They didn't deserve that. They deserved breakfast, clean clothes, a father who stood tall even when he was crumbling inside. So I pulled myself up, washed my face in the sink and forced my voice steady. But every step, every word I spoke to them, carried the weight of that note on the counter. Every smile I tried to give was stretched thin over the wound she left. I watched them eat cereal, unaware, their little mouths full, their eyes bright, and I promised myself one thing: they wouldn't feel her absence the way I did. They would still know love, even if it had to come from one heart instead of two. As they left for school, backpacks bouncing, I stood at the doorway holding that note in my pocket, folded and refolded until the paper started to wear. A single sentence, but it felt like a book with no ending. The apartment was quiet again once they were gone. Too quiet. And that's when it hit me hardest. Not just that she left, but that she left without regret. No goodbye, no fight, no second thought, just gone. Like I was nothing but a shadow she'd already stepped out of. And for the first time in a long time, I wondered if maybe I was. I carried that note in my pocket like it was stitched into my skin. All day, every step I took, I felt the paper against me, sharp like it had teeth. I can't do this anymore. Those 5 words didn't explain anything, but somehow explained everything at once. The kids came home from school loud and hungry, throwing bags on the floor, asking what was for dinner. I forced myself to move, to cook, to smile. But every time one of them looked up at me, I saw her face in their eyes. And with every flash of her face came another memory, one I had ignored, one I should have paid attention to. Like that night 2 months back when she came home later than usual. I had just finished heating leftovers, waiting with the kids already asleep. She walked in with a look I hadn't seen in years. Not happy, not sad, just somewhere far away. I asked if she was okay and she said, "Just tired." I let it go. I didn't want to fight, but I remember how she didn't touch her food, how she went straight to bed without a word. At the time I chalked it up to stress. Now I wonder who she had been with, or what she had been thinking that she couldn't say out loud. Or the mornings when she'd sit on the edge of the bed, scrolling her phone, face lit by that cold blue glow. I'd be tying my boots, ready for another shift, and I'd ask, "What you looking at?" She'd say, "Nothing." Just like that, nothing. But the way she tilted the screen, the way her shoulders stiffened, it wasn't nothing. I felt it then, but I buried it, because what was I going to do? I had 4 kids to feed, hours to clock, a body to break. Jealousy didn't pay rent, even her laughter. God, her laughter. I realized it had been months since I'd heard it. Used to be she'd laugh at the smallest things, a slip on the ice, a silly joke one of the kids made, me tripping over my own shoelaces after a long shift. But slowly that sound faded, replaced by silence. I told myself love matures, gets quieter. But love shouldn't feel like a funeral. One memory burned sharper than the rest. A Sunday afternoon. The kids were playing outside, and we were sitting in the living room. I tried to pull her close, to rest her head on my shoulder like we used to. She pulled away, gentle but firm, and said, "Not now." I laughed it off, tried to make it light, but her eyes stayed distant. I saw the truth then, but I buried it under work, under excuses. Because if I admitted it, I'd have to face the fact that she was already gone. Now, sitting at the kitchen table with her note unfolded, I heard all those echoes louder than ever. Every just tired, every nothing, every not now. They rang in my head like bells I had ignored, warnings I had silenced. Regret crawled over me, heavy and cold. I should have asked more. I should have pushed for answers. I should have fought harder for us. But then another thought clawed its way in. Maybe none of it would have mattered. Maybe she had already decided long before that note, long before that empty bed. Maybe the love I thought I was holding on to had already slipped through her fingers while I was too busy holding everything else. That night, after the kids fell asleep, I sat in the dark with a beer I couldn't finish, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the pipes, the faint sound of traffic outside. It all felt louder than my own heartbeat. I wanted to scream at her ghost, ask her why she couldn't just speak before she vanished, ask her why she didn't fight for us, for the kids, for the life we built out of sweat and sacrifice. But ghosts don't answer. They only echo. And so I sat there, replaying her distance in my head, knowing regret doesn't change the past, but still drowning in it. The house felt smaller, the walls tighter, the air colder. And all I could think was, if love dies, does it make a sound? Because if it does, I swear I heard it in every silence she ever left behind. Morning came too early, and my body wasn't ready. But the kids don't wait for rest. They woke up hungry, loud, and full of questions I wasn't prepared to answer. I pulled myself out of bed, every bone begging me to lie back down, and dragged my feet to the kitchen. The fridge was nearly empty. Half a gallon of milk, a carton of eggs, some beans in a plastic container. I cracked 4 eggs into a pan, scrambled them quick, and split them onto plates like I was dividing treasure. "Eat up," I told them, trying to sound light. But they knew. Kids always know. Their eyes scanned my face, searching for something I didn't have. An explanation, a comfort, maybe even a lie that everything was fine. My oldest, 9 years old, asked, "Where's Mom?" The words cut sharper than any knife. I froze, spatula still in my hand. I wanted to tell the truth, but what was the truth? That she left us like we were just another bill she couldn't pay? That she walked out without a goodbye, without regret? No, they didn't deserve that weight. So I swallowed the lump in my throat and said, she had to go for a while. My voice cracked on while, but they didn't push. Maybe they wanted to believe me. Maybe they already knew the truth, but weren't ready to say it out loud. After breakfast, I got them dressed, found mismatched socks, tied laces that were frayed thin, and packed them off to school. 4 small backpacks lined up at the door, 4 little bodies heading out into the world. I kissed the top of each head, told them I loved them, and watched as they disappeared around the corner. And then it was just me again, standing in an apartment that felt too big without her, yet too small to hold all my worries. The hours between school drop-off and pick-up stretched long. I tried to clean, to fix the leaky faucet, to patch the tear in the couch cushion. Busy hands, busy mind, that's what I told myself. But no chore could scrub away the emptiness. Every corner of the house whispered her absence. The chair she used to sit in, the spot on the counter where she left her coffee cup, the dent in the pillow already fading. By afternoon, I clocked in for another shift at the warehouse. My body was still broken from the 16-hour day, but there was no choice. 4 mouths needed food. I pushed forklifts, stacked pallets, sweat soaking through my shirt. Every ache reminded me I wasn't just working for survival anymore. I was working to cover the hole she left. When I came home that night, the kids were waiting. Homework scattered across the table, crayons rolling on the floor, voices all calling for me at once. "Dad, can you help me?" "Dad, I'm hungry." "Dad, where's my toy?" Their words collided, a storm of needs, and I felt the weight press down harder. But then the youngest crawled onto my lap, tiny arms wrapping around my neck, and whispered, "I love you, Daddy." That small voice carried enough strength to hold me up. Dinner was rice and beans again. I stirred the pot, added salt, and tried to make it taste like more than it was. The kids ate quick, smiles spreading even as they licked the spoons clean. I watched them, realizing they didn't care if the meal was simple. What mattered was that I was there, that I was trying. And in that moment, the regret I carried for her leaving shifted into something else, a resolve. Night came, and I tucked them in, kissed each forehead, pulled blankets over small shoulders. They asked again about her. "When's Mom coming back?" I forced a smile, brushed hair out of their eyes, and said, "Soon." But when I closed the door and sat in the dark, my face dropped, my chest cracked open. Because deep down I knew she wasn't coming back. Still, I made a promise to myself right there. If it was just me, then I'd be enough. I didn't know how, but I would. 4 mouths, 1 heart, and if my heart had to break 1,000 times to keep them fed, clothed, and loved, then so be it. That night, as the house fell silent, I sat by the window staring out at the city lights. My hands ached, my back screamed, my soul felt empty. But for the first time since she left, I felt something steady inside me. Not peace, not hope exactly, but a stubborn fire. She had walked away. I couldn't. Those kids deserved better than an empty bed and a folded note. They deserved a father who stayed, no matter how heavy the nights got. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to carry us through. The streets always talk. Even when you don't ask, even when you don't want to know, the block has a way of carrying secrets like smoke in the air. You can't see where it starts, but you can smell it, taste it, feel it burning in your chest. It began small. A neighbor nodded at me too long, eyes heavy with pity. Another one whispered something to her friend as I walked past, voices dropping the second I looked their way. I told myself I was imagining it, paranoia from too many sleepless nights. But then came the first words spoken out loud. "Marcus, you holding up?" Old man Davis asked me as I walked back from the corner store, a bag of rice in one hand, diapers in the other. He stood on his porch, leaning against the railing, eyes tired but sharp. "Doing what I can," I said, keeping my voice steady. He nodded slow, then added, "People saying they saw her, you know, across town. With someone." He didn't look me in the eyes when he said it. He looked at the ground, like the dirt might swallow his words before they reached me. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat closed up and I kept walking, rice bag pressing into my palm until it hurt. By the time I got home, the whispers had multiplied in my head. With someone. What did that mean? Who? How long? Was it true or just another cruel story the streets like to tell? I wanted to believe it was a lie. I wanted to believe she just needed space, that maybe one day she'd knock on the door and apologize, even if I'd never forgive her fully. But the more I tried to drown those whispers, the louder they got. The next day, another blow. I stopped by the laundromat, kids' clothes stuffed in a plastic bag, quarters in my pocket. While I waited for the dryer, 2 women sat folding sheets nearby. They spoke in low tones, but not low enough. "She ran off with that guy, you know, the one with the red car." "Mm-hmm. Always picking her up after dark." I seen it, my chest tightened. I wanted to walk over, demand they say it to my face, demand they show me proof. But instead I sat there staring at the tumbling clothes, listening to the metal clank of the dryer, pretending I didn't hear. Because hearing it meant believing it, and I wasn't ready. Later that night, my oldest asked again, "When's Mom coming back?" His voice was thin, cracking in a way a 9-year-old's voice shouldn't. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the question behind his eyes. Why did she leave us? I wanted to lie, to say she was visiting family or working or sick. But the lies stuck in my throat, so I just said, "I don't know." And the truth is I didn't. I didn't know if she was gone forever, if she was in love with someone else, if she ever thought of the kids she left behind. I didn't know if the whispers were smoke or fire. The block didn't stop talking. Every corner I turned, every store I entered, every porch I passed, I felt eyes on me. Some full of pity, some full of curiosity, some maybe even full of satisfaction, like they had been waiting for my life to crack open. At work, the guys started looking at me different too. One of them, Jamal, clapped me on the shoulder during lunch and said, "Heard she bounced, man. You good?" His voice carried the kind of sympathy that's heavier than mockery. I forced a laugh, shoved another bite of sandwich in my mouth and said, "I'm good." But inside, I wasn't good. I was bleeding, and everyone seemed to know before I did. The nights grew harder. I'd tuck the kids in, then sit at the kitchen table staring at the wall, the note, the empty chair across from me. My mind spun with pictures I didn't want, her in another man's car, her laughing the way she hadn't laughed with me in months, her building a new life while I was still piecing this one together. The whispers painted images crueler than any truth. One night, after another long shift, I walked back from the bus stop and passed two guys on the corner. They were talking low, smoking, but I caught enough. "Yeah, man, she with him now. Crazy how she left Marcus with all them kids." They didn't know I was close enough to hear. Or maybe they did. Either way, the words sliced through me. I wanted to turn, wanted to swing, wanted to scream that they didn't know me, didn't know us, didn't know what it felt like to work 16 hours and come home to an empty bed. But instead I kept walking. My fists clenched, my jaw locked, my chest burning with a fire I couldn't put out. By the time I reached my door, my hands were shaking. The kids ran up, hugging me, tugging at my shirt, asking about dinner. And just like that, the fire shifted, because I realized I couldn't afford to burn. Not for them. Not when they needed me whole. I looked at their faces, sweaty from playing, eyes wide with expectation, and something inside me cracked. Not in the way that makes you weaker, but in the way that forces you to hold tighter. Their arms wrapped around me were stronger than any chain. For a moment I forgot about the whispers, forgot about the two men laughing on the corner, forgot about the hole she left behind. All I saw was them. And I knew, if I burned myself down, they'd have no shelter left. So I pulled myself together even as my chest was still on fire. I set my bag down, loosened my boots, and headed straight to the kitchen. Rice in the pot, beans in the pan, water boiling. My hands moved on instinct, muscle memory from years of repeating the same meals, stretching the same ingredients. The kids sat at the table, arguing over crayons, giggling about inside jokes I didn't fully understand. Their voices filled the room like music, covering the silence that had haunted me for weeks. The whispers weren't going to stop. The block would keep talking, keep spinning its stories, true or not. Maybe they'd say she found someone richer, someone easier. Maybe they'd say I drove her away with long hours and short tempers. The streets don't care about truth. They care about noise. And maybe one day I'd know the full truth. Maybe one day she'd look me in the eye and say it plain. But until then, my truth was standing right in front of me. 4 kids who didn't care what the streets said, who only cared that I was there cooking rice, tucking them in, kissing their foreheads. After dinner, I sat with them while they did homework. My oldest stumbled over words in a book, sounding them out slow, his little sister correcting him even when she was wrong. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a while. It felt strange, like pulling a muscle I hadn't used in years. Later, I tucked them in, pulled the blankets up, and kissed their foreheads. They clung to me a second longer than usual, as if they knew I needed it, as if they were tucking me in too. Still, when the house grew quiet and I lay down at night, staring at the empty side of the bed, the whispers echoed. Louder than silence, louder than memory. They snuck in through the cracks of the walls, through the quiet hum of the fridge, through the beating of my own heart. Echoes that made me wonder if I ever really knew her at all, or if I had been loving a ghost long before she left. And as I drifted into uneasy sleep, one thought lingered. Sometimes it's not the leaving that breaks you, but the echoes that stay behind. It took me a long time to admit it, but the truth came quiet. Like a whisper that turned into a storm, she wasn't coming back. No text, no call, no knock on the door at midnight. Nothing, just silence. And silence has a way of telling the truth louder than words ever could. At first I waited. Every time I heard footsteps in the hall, my heart jumped. Every time the phone buzzed, I thought maybe it was her. I kept the note folded in my pocket, like holding it close might keep her close too. But the days stretched into weeks and the weeks into months. The pillow on her side of the bed lost its shape. The kids stopped asking about her every day, then every week, then hardly at all. The wound was still there, but it scabbed over with routine. I had no choice but to rise. Mornings became my battlefield. 4 kids to dress, 4 mouths to feed, 4 little souls to guide. I learned how to braid hair with shaky hands, how to scrub grass stains out of pants, how to turn 1 pot of beans into 3 different meals so it didn't feel the same every night. I became nurse, teacher, referee, and cook, all before clocking in for a 10-hour shift. Some days I stumbled, late to school drop-off, lunchboxes half filled. Some days I forgot my own hunger, just to keep theirs quiet. But slowly the chaos turned into rhythm. I started writing lists, sticky notes on the fridge, reminders taped to the wall, groceries, bills, appointments, homework. At first, the notes felt like proof of how much I was failing, how much I had to juggle alone. But after a while I saw them for what they were, survival maps. Evidence that even broken I was still moving forward. The warehouse became more than just a job. It became the weight room for my spirit. Every box I lifted, every hour I sweated, I told myself, this is for them. When my body screamed, I thought of their faces at the dinner table, their laughter spilling across the room, their small hands reaching for mine. Pain became fuel. Exhaustion became a language I spoke fluently, but it wasn't just survival anymore. Something else started to grow inside me. A stubbornness, maybe, a fire that refused to let me collapse. She had walked away, but I refused to let her absence define the story. I refused to let my kids believe love always ends in abandonment. If she taught them one lesson by leaving, then I would teach them 10 by staying. The whispers from the block didn't stop. I still heard her name floating through the air, tied to another man, tied to another life. At first, every rumor cut me open, but over time the pain dulled. Not because I forgave her, no, forgiveness was still far off, but because I realized those whispers had no power over me anymore. They didn't feed my kids. They didn't pay my bills. They didn't hold my house together when the roof leaked or the lights flickered. I did, and that became enough. There were nights, though, long, heavy nights, where the silence pressed too hard. When the kids were asleep and the apartment was dark, the loneliness hit like a hammer. I'd sit at the table staring at the note, my fists clenched, my jaw tight, anger rolling through me like thunder. I'd ask God why he gave me this weight, why he let her walk away so easy. But in the middle of that anger, I'd hear a sound, the soft breathing of my kids through the thin walls. And it reminded me I wasn't alone. I still had them, and they still had me. I started finding joy in small things. My daughter's first perfect braid, the way my youngest giggled when I burned pancakes and called them special crispy, the look on my son's face when I showed up at his school play, sweaty and tired from work, but still there, clapping louder than anyone. Those moments were sparks in the dark, little flames that kept me from freezing completely. One Sunday I decided to take them to the park. I packed sandwiches, a bottle of juice, a blanket. Nothing fancy. We sat under a tree watching the clouds drift by. For the first time in months I felt something close to peace. The kids laughed, chased each other, climbed the rusted jungle gym. I lay back on the grass, the sun warm on my face, and realized maybe this was enough. Maybe love didn't need to look like a perfect family with 2 parents. Maybe love was just showing up every single day, even when it hurt. The block still watched me, still whispered. Some people called me strong, others pitied me. Some even laughed behind my back. But I stopped listening. Their words didn't change the fact that my kids went to bed with full bellies, that their homework got done, that their lives kept moving forward. Their words couldn't touch what I was building inside these 4 walls. I'd be lying if I said I stopped missing her. Some nights I still dreamed of her laugh, of the way she used to look at me when love was fresh. I'd wake up reaching for her, only to find the bed cold. The ache never fully left. But instead of letting it hollow me out, I used it as a reminder I survived. They survived. We were still here. And slowly I stopped living like a man waiting for her return. I stopped checking my phone. I stopped hoping for footsteps at the door. I stopped carrying the note in my pocket. Instead, I folded it one last time and tucked it deep into a drawer, buried under old receipts and forgotten papers. A relic of the past, not the anchor of my present. She left. That was her choice. But I stayed. That was mine. And in that choice I found something I didn't expect. Strength. Not the kind that comes from muscle or sweat, but the kind that comes from breaking and still standing. The kind that rises from ashes, one heart. 4 mouths. And against all odds it was enough. The morning light slid through the blinds like it always did, thin stripes cutting across the room, warming the sheets. For months that light had been my enemy. It meant another day of explaining, another day of surviving, another day of carrying weight I hadn't asked for. But this morning felt different. Not lighter, not easier, just different. I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing my hands together, staring at the empty space beside me. It had been empty so long it didn't hurt the same way anymore. It wasn't a wound, not even a scar. It was just space. I pressed my hand against the sheet, cool under my palm, and realized I no longer expected it to be warm. She was gone, and that space belonged to the silence now. And maybe that was okay. The kids were already stirring in the next room. I could hear the shuffle of small feet, the whispers, the laughter, the occasional argument about who got the red cup. Those sounds had become my alarm clock, my reason to rise. I stood stretched and stepped into the day like a soldier into battle. Except the battlefield wasn't blood and bullets. It was cereal bowls, shoelaces, backpacks, and scraped knees. Breakfast was simple as always. Toast, eggs, a splash of milk divided into 4 glasses. They ate like it was a feast, heads bent over plates, laughter spilling out between bites. I watched them, felt something tighten in my chest and then loosen. They weren't broken. They weren't ruined by her leaving. They were still laughing, still dreaming, still growing. And somehow I had been enough to keep that alive. After I dropped them off at school, I walked back through the neighborhood. The block still whispered, but I didn't hear it the same way anymore. Their voices were like distant echoes now, bouncing off walls I no longer cared to lean against. Pity, gossip, judgment, it was all background noise. The only voices that mattered were the ones that called me Dad. Work was the same grind. Boxes, forklifts, sweat soaking through my shirt. But I carried myself different. I wasn't just working to survive anymore. I was working to build. I started putting a little aside, dollar by dollar, not just for bills, but for the future. A better apartment? Maybe a small car, maybe a chance to give the kids more than hand-me-downs and stretched meals. The future didn't look easy, but it looked possible. At night, after homework and dinner, after bedtime stories and kisses on foreheads, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. I wrote plans, schedules, budgets, lists of goals, things I never thought I'd bother with before. I used to believe life was just about getting through the day, but now I wanted more. Not just for me, but for them. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the dark window. I looked older, lines deeper, eyes heavier, but I also saw something else, a steadiness, a kind of strength I didn't recognize before. A man who had been abandoned but didn't abandon back. A man who stayed. One Friday evening I took the kids for ice cream. Just a small treat, nothing fancy. We sat on the curb outside the shop, cones dripping down their fingers, faces sticky with sugar. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. My youngest leaned against me, her small hand gripping mine, and said, "This is the best day." My throat tightened, and I had to look away so they wouldn't see the tears in my eyes. Because for the first time since she left, I felt it too. The best day. She never called. Never came back, not once. And maybe she never will. I don't know where she is, who she's with, if she even thinks about us at all. But I stopped waiting for that door to open. I stopped checking my phone, stopped glancing at shadows in the hallway. Her story walked out of this house, but ours kept going. The truth is, she left without regret. And maybe that's her burden to carry, not mine. My regret turned into resolve. My pain turned into fire. My broken nights turned into mornings filled with laughter I never thought I'd hear again. So now when the dawn comes, I don't fear it. I don't fight it. I rise with it. The bed is still half empty, but the house is full of voices, of chaos, of love that doesn't quit. And as I stand at the window, watching the first light touch the streets, I know this much. We survived. We're still here, and though she's gone, our life keeps moving forward. Dawn without her, but dawn all the same.